I'm not gonna, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a fish. Little baby one. Little baby fella.
Baby.
Oh, little baby fella's about to break my rod. Oh, there's another one. Ah, little baby fella. So you liked fishing yesterday, huh? So if there's one bait out there that every bass fisherman has ever heard of, that is going to be a single swim bait, right? Everybody out there that has bass fished or even fished in general has thrown one of these. Whether you're a walleye fisherman, bass fisherman, crappie fisherman, it does not matter. The reason people throw this kind of a bait is that it catches fish. But if everybody's throwing it, especially this time of year when those fish are chasing bait, if everybody's throwing it, you have to differentiate yourself from the rest of the crowd. That is just plain and simple. You'll still catch fish on it, but you're not going to catch the quality and the quantity that you're wanting to be catching. So there's a few simple things that I do to my swim baits that you should do to yours that'll help you catch a bunch more fish and bigger fish, and I'm going to break those down for you right now. Real quick though, guys, if you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button to follow along with my regular content every Tuesday and Thursday. That way you can stay along with all the new tips and tricks that I have coming out every single week. So one of the biggest mistakes that I see guys doing with a single swim bait is they throw a ball head. There is nothing wrong with a ball head. If you're smallmouth fishing, the way those fish eat that bait, you're not going to lose them, okay? They will have it hooked in the roof of their mouth every single time. But if you are a largemouth fisherman and you are fishing for largemouth solely, stop throwing that head right there. Here's what happens and here's why. So when a fish eats this, a smallmouth clamps down on it. A spotted bass clamps down on it. You don't have to worry about those fish coming off because the way they eat it, that hook point goes through their meaty lips every single time. But a largemouth has very rigid lips, and most oftentimes what happens when they eat this bait, you set the hook, most oftentimes you're throwing it on a spinning rod or a light bait caster. What it does is it rolls. It's a ball head. It has no differentiating feature on the head. It's a round head. So it rolls and you skin hook them in the roof of the mouth. It doesn't happen every single time, but it happens with the bigger fish. The bigger the fish, the more it happens, because what happens is they clamp down on your line when they suck that bait in, and then it barely rolls and you end up hooking them like that, where it just rolls and you hook sideways on the skin of their mouth. You don't notice it until they come up next to the boat and they throw your swim bait a mile, and then that's when you notice it and you're like, holy crap, I can't believe I just did that. So what you want to do is you want to throw a swim bait head that has a flat bottom on it. So what swim bait head do you want to be throwing? This is a new 6 Sense Divine swim bait head. It's actually meant for an umbrella rig, but the beautiful part about it is it has a keeled head shape. So what that keeled head shape does is when a largemouth eats that, the bottom of that bait doesn't allow it to turn in their mouth. So they eat it and it starts to turn, but it doesn't allow it, so you get a straight hook point through the roof of their mouth going straight in like this instead of turning sideways. That will give you a much better hookup ratio. 100%. I've dealt with this myself on Dale Hollow Lake when I was fishing suspended fish. You will notice a giant difference with the fish catches that you have with this. They'll be hooked a ton better with that one. But after that, I want to talk about some of the things that I do to my swim baits. Okay, you can see this one has all this goofy stuff going on right here. You have your ordinary swim bait right here. This is a Z-Man Diesel minnow. I like this one when I'm catching a bunch of fish because, as you can see, you're not going to have any problems with it. So if I'm going through numbers of fish, that's what I'm going to throw right there because I'm not going to go through as much baits. If I'm going through finicky fish, I'm going to throw that Kitech like everybody else likes to throw. But you can see this bait has a lot going on right here. So one of the things that I like to do is I will take some of that Dip and Glow, and I will put some chartreuse on the tail and maybe some on the belly. What is the reason behind that? So the reason I like to do that is because this time of year, those fish are feeding heavily going into the fall, like the later fall and the winter period, because they want to get stocked up for winter time. Once winter hits, they're really not going to feed as much, and so they're trying to get it all in now, and they're chasing bait like crazy. So what you find yourself getting into is you get into these areas where there's a ton of bait fish. And when you get into these schools where there's a ton of bait fish, you have to find a way to differentiate your bait from the rest of them. Because what those fish are doing is they're taking the easy meals. They want those weakened bait fish. So if you can do something to make your bait look disabled, make it look slower, give it something that sticks out. You know, it's kind of like if If you're looking at a flock of geese and all of a sudden there's one that sticks out, you're like, well, that's the easy one because he's weak. That's what you want to look for with your bait. So if I put a dab of chartreuse on there, it makes it stand out in that fish's mind where he's looking at it and he goes, wow, that one looks different. I'm going to eat that one because different means weaker. So that's what they're going to try to do, right? Another thing that you saw was I have a blade hooked on there. Okay, this is a screw lock blade. What I do is I will screw lock that into the bottom of whatever swim bait I happen to be throwing. Whether it's that diesel minnow, whether it's a Kitech in any of the sizes, you know, a diesel minnow in a 2 or 3, 4, 5 inch versus a Kitech in a 2.8, 3.3, 3.8, whatever. Now what I've done is I've given that a different look where it's putting out more vibration. So as all these bait fish are moving, this one is going to be putting off more vibration because that blade is going to be kicking down below there, and it's just going to look different. It's going to make it look obvious to these fish that this is the one that they are going to want to eat. So that's what I'm going to do with that. That's how I'm going to get bigger bites and how I'm going to catch more fish. In these giant clouds of bait, you have to make yours stand out. And those are a couple of the things that I'm going to do. So another thing that I see guys doing on a daily basis is they throw their light swim baits on too heavy of gear. I like to throw mine on a Finesse spinning rod. I throw it on Arc Essence in like a 7-foot model, medium light, fast action rod. And I pair that with a Shimano Corrado, or not a Shimano Corrado, what is that? An Ultegra, any of the Shimano spinning line reels, they're all phenomenal reels. And what that does is when I pair that with a 10-pound P-line TCB braid to a 10-pound P-line tactical fluorocarbon leader, what that does is that gives that bait a whole different action. The lighter line gives that bait more action. It allows it to actually swim freely, gives it a faster fall rate, and it allows me to fish that bait deeper. And I can actually get away with fishing a lighter head, this 3/16 ounce head. I can kind of fish that anywhere I want by changing my rod angle. But like I said, it gives that bait all the action that it has in it because the heavier the line, it takes away the roll that that bait is going to have, whether you're throwing a Kitech or whether you're throwing that diesel minnow. You know, it takes away the action of the bait. So keeping that in mind, what I will do is if I want to fish it a little bit deeper on a little bit heavier line, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pair that with an underspin. It feels like guys have completely forgotten about an underspin these days. I don't know why, but you really don't see it unless you're on a lot of the herring lakes. It works phenomenal when you're on some of these shad lakes, especially in the northern country where I'm at for smallmouth, even largemouth. That underspin gets you a bunch of bites because it allows me to fish that bait insanely deeper than most guys are fishing it. You know, most guys are trying to upsize and throw bigger swim baits, where I can throw that smaller swim bait to match the size of the shad that are around this year. You know, this time of the year in the fall, you have the shad that were born in the spring. The majority is what those bass are feeding on. So most of the bait fish is small. So when those guys are throwing that 3.8, that 4.3, a lot of times they're not getting the bites because it just doesn't look anything like the shad that those fish are feeding on. The biggest thing I can tell you is keeping that size profile, but changing the color of the bait, adding a blade. That's how you get more bites. If you throw a bigger bait, you might get a bite, but it's gonna be a big fish, but you're not gonna catch a lot of fish because most of those fish are gonna see that and go, that's completely wrong. So that's one of the biggest things that I'm going to do to change how I catch fish and change the depth that I throw this at. If I want to go to that casting gear, I'm going to go to that underspin that has a little bit heavier head on it to keep that profile the same, but just allow me to fish that bait a little bit deeper. So hopefully the tips that I talked about help you guys catch more fish on a single swim bait this fall. If you guys like this video, be sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video. And if you like this video, be sure to check out this video I'm going to have linked up here where I talk about what I wish somebody would have told me about for spook fishing, because I break down the differences between largemouth and smallmouth gear, and I go in depth on the same spooks that I use and how I catch more fish and how I stop losing fish on a spook. But thank you guys so much for watching. God bless y'all, and y'all take care.